Hello and welcome to the March installment and the sixth episode of the Kushmerek Connection. I am delighted to be joined today by City Council President Anthony Zarella, who is newly re-elected to the post of Council President in January. He is a third-term City Councilor and a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Anthony, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Former member of the Zoning Board, unfortunately.
That's right. A fairly new development, yeah.
Yeah, but 5 years, it was good.
Yes.
I was very, very pleased to be able to do that, and were it not for the conflict of interest, I'd be still doing it.
Well, and the city was fortunate to have you there that whole time and to really make that transition from ZBA to council. So I guess you've been active in the city. Let's start right there. You've been active in the city for years, and how did you, what made you get involved first with the Zoning Board of Appeals and then on to council and presidency and everything else that you do in the community?
To be honest, initially I kind of stumbled into it.
Sure.
I had just come back to Massachusetts from Connecticut after law school. It was always my intention to come back, but I had just come back after law school. I was preparing to take the bar, and I got a call from the mayor, who at the time was in his first term,
Sure.
saying that he had a vacancy on the zoning board and needed an attorney, and wanted to know if I was interested. And I said, sure. I had no idea what it even entailed at the time. They don't really teach a lot of zoning law at law school.
No, they don't. And I having been on the other call of other end of the line when the mayor calls for, would you be willing to help out with, blank? Often I find you think it's a rather quick and brief commitment of, an hour or two once a month. With the ZBA and meetings that routinely run into the late hours of the night, bordering on the early hours of the morning, I'm sure you'll learn that lesson pretty quickly.
Yeah. I think it was probably maybe 2 or 3 months into my 5-year term on the ZBA that I had my first midnight meeting, and that was starting at 6 o'clock. So it can go a while. People have a lot to say about the properties they're trying to develop, and there's often some very technical stuff that has to be hashed out. But it was a wonderful group of people to work with. I'm still in touch with most of them and glad to be. And really, it was a very rewarding experience. Really got me immersed in the day-to-day life of the city of Fitchburg in a way that just living here for most of my life hadn't yet done. I understood where development was going on, what some of the challenges were, what people were looking, what people found attractive about the city or difficult about the city. And that really prepped me for the next step.
Because at the end of the day, the ZBA really is the front line of development. Before an idea even really takes root in the city, they're often meeting with you and starting to review, both the plans and whether or not it conforms to code and zoning and everything else, right? And you see that project all the way through usually. Is that correct?
Yeah, between zoning and planning, the division between which is kind of arcane and probably not of interest to anyone watching this, but between the two boards, it basically, pretty much every project that's bigger than like a house renovation, and even some of the house renovations end up going before one or both of those boards. And the way the zoning code works is really critical to the vision that we have for the city, as we discovered when we revamped the whole zoning code over the course of the pandemic year, actually, which was a blast doing
because
all that over
Zoom.
Zoom.
Else happening in local government at that point, right?
Oh yeah, no other challenges. Yep,
Right.
Nothing to think about but zoning.
Right. Well, let's get into that, right? Because I think you were able to take that experience that you gleaned from from the ZBA and really take that into a very successful first and second term on the Fitchburg City Council, and just starting now in your third term. So, what made you want to take that leap, and how has it gone so far?
Well, again, honestly, it started with a phone call. Someone told me that Councilor and former Mayor Jeff Bean was going to retire from the council, and that there was going to be a vacancy, and no one knew who was going to be running for it yet. And was I interested? And at first my response was, I don't know, because I've never seen myself as a public figure before. I can be a little awkward and not great in crowds, but I thought about it and I talked to some people and I was like, give it a try. I probably won't win anyway, but I'll give it a try. And so I went out and I knocked on all the doors and I, found myself on the city council. And honestly, it's been terrific since then. I didn't know if I would like it or not, and I love it. I can't imagine a better use of my time than the city council and the associated activities.
And I think you've really become an inspiration to so many. I think you just really hit it on the head there. Most people's perception is that you have to be an extreme extrovert to be in public life and to serve as a public servant and an elected official. And the reality is you don't. And the reality is that we need people of diverse skill sets and life experiences to effectively legislate and govern. And you have done just such an amazing job of bringing that and really illustrating that to our local community and beyond. And really, your kindness and compassion is evident in everything that you do. And
thank you.
So I'm delighted that that those concerns and those fears did not hold you back, and yet again another really kind of inspiration to so many.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying. I try not to make too big a deal out of it or anything, but when and where I can, I try to mention to people that, this is a realistic aspiration for an autistic person. For anyone who's watching who hasn't already heard through other channels, I'm autistic. And that's part of why I never thought I could do this. And I want other people in the city and beyond, whether it's autistic kids, autistic adults, parents of autistic kids, I just want them to know that, yeah, there may be things that it turns out that you can't accomplish. I have my limitations, certainly. But you should never assume that autism imposes a given limitation, that just by knowing that you're on the spectrum, you should just give up on X, Y, or Z, because it may not be as big a barrier as you think it will, and it may even be an asset. I've found it's been, at least to some degree, an asset.
Absolutely, and I think really those limitations have not been apparent, from what I've seen, and you've brought an incredible skill set and viewpoints, and again, life experience to council, and I think. Public service and elected bodies are at their very best when they have a diverse array of skill sets and life experiences. And not only has it not inhibited your path, you are now city council president for the city of Fitchburg. And so it seems like you've really found a real path forward here and really helping to lead this city into the future.
I hope so, yeah, because I see an incredibly bright future for the city of Fitchburg. It's been my home all my life. I kind of pretend that the couple years in Connecticut didn't happen. But it's been my home for my entire life and my family's home. But it went through some rough times. But now I look at where we're headed and I see nothing but potential. We're on a meteoric rise in this city, and I don't doubt that 5 or 10 years from now, we will be setting the example for other communities in North Central Mass and across the state, to the extent that we aren't already.
I couldn't agree more. And just, in our last episode, we had Tom Skorofsky, the executive director of community development and planning. And he was really highlighting there's just something in the water here, because Fitchburg just collaborates better than anybody else. And I truly believe that, from local to federal, across nonprofit and private sectors alike. I think we just collaborate better than any other community in the Commonwealth. And I think that knows no political boundaries, right?
Right.
It's no secret you and I hail from different political parties, yet I think you have been one of the partners that I've collaborated with the most during my time on both city council and now as state representative. And I think on everything from, zoning reform to wage theft and tax classification and even housing, and ideas that, at face value, people may think there's no way they could get along and find a common ground. I think we've been quite successful in doing so. And I don't think that is restricted to just you and I. I think that's indicative of the larger collaborative environment and atmosphere that we have in Fitchburg.
Absolutely. I would completely agree. I think Fitchburg, honestly, I was talking about Fitchburg standing as an example. Fitchburg could stand as an example to Washington.
I couldn't agree more.
It's, we have, just this past campaign season, I am, I'm a Republican. I've never hidden that fact.
Right.
I'm a Republican. I'm a very conservative Republican, in fact, which should not be mixed up with very right-wing. Those are two different things.
Yes, absolutely.
But I'm a very conservative Republican, and I got, the support of, the firefighters union, think about that, a Republican union guy. It's like, really? But yeah, in Fitchburg, it works. I got the support of most of the city's top Democrats.
Absolutely.
In addition to a lot of the city's Republicans.
That's right.
And that's not because I'm just that amazing. It's because in Fitchburg, I feel like people really do care more about who's gonna work hard for the best interests of the city and who's going to work with others, like you said, collaborate. People don't want to see factions in the city just squabbling and clashing. It's not about winning. It's about moving the city forward.
And I think if you start with that premise of what do we have in common, and
right.
where do we both agree that we want to move in the direction that we want to head in, if you start there as the start of the conversation, the differences melt away and you focus on the commonalities.
Right, and your wage theft bill was actually an excellent example. You brought that forward. I looked through the text, and there were some bits that I was like, right. But I talked to you about it, and we hashed out a bill that could be, I think it was unanimously supported by the council.
And it's the strongest piece of wage theft, anti-wage theft, legislation in the Commonwealth. And right now, the Massachusetts legislature is taking up the same issue. And Fitchburg and Worcester are the two examples that they're pointing to. And I continue to tell my Republican colleagues that this isn't a partisan issue. This is really an issue we can both agree on that not only protects workers, but protects the tax system and ensures that we follow the rules that we have on the books,
right.
and follow them to the letter of the law. And And I think that's what happens, to your point of Washington can take a lesson, but Beacon Hill can also take a lesson. And I think we're at our best when we collaborate, when we focus on our commonalities and what makes us, both public servants and elected officials, and when we focus on our constituents and the people we serve and represent, you're never going to go wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, if you feel that the city really, or that the state really needs A, B, C, D, and I think that we really need B, C, D, E, well, okay, let's set A and E aside for the moment and pass B, C, and D.
Absolutely.
Rather than, you trying to ram A down my throat and me saying, no, I won't vote for your thing unless it has E. Why? Why not just do the things that we agree are best for everyone and then debate the things that we disagree on afterwards?
Perfectly said. And I think when we talk about how we de-escalate a bit and try to find the antidote for some of the partisanism that is really paralyzing, Washington and so many other commonwealths and states across the country, I think we need to look no further than right here in downtown Fitchburg. So President Zarella, thank you so much for coming on the show, and look forward to the continued partnership and collaboration at every turn.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
All right. And to our viewers, stay tuned. Coming up next, we have local developer Nick Pelletier, and we'll be back in just a moment. And welcome back to the Kushmerek Connection. Joining me now is our newest guest, Nick Pelletier. He is of Pelletier Properties and with Keller Williams North Central, but you're also the president of the North Central Massachusetts Association of Realtors. Nick, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Absolutely. So you're incredibly involved in the community, and beyond your property development, your real estate, and your legislative and national advocacy on behalf of the real estate community. You're also involved in a number of nonprofits, particularly St. Bernard's at a local level. How have you gotten so involved in everything you do?
Things always happen for a reason. I think a lot of times you don't really seek out the things that are going to come your way, and the people around me will tell you I'm not always good at saying no. It's not my favorite word. I'm working on it.
Not always good. I don't think I've ever heard you say no.
No, yeah. I know, but I am working on it. It is always an opportunity for improvement. And the reality is a lot of things I've said yes to have been the right things to do at the right times. And St. Bernard's was a very unique situation. I would say, unlike, you're talking a dime a dozen in what we did at St. Bernard's. A lot of the schools you look at that have faced similar fates of St. Bernard's did not make it.
Right.
We may have been 1 in 100, really, that pulled off what we did. And so it needed to be done. Not only for Fitchburg in general, for Fitchburg from a real estate standpoint. You talk about St. Bernard's filling a lot of real estate in terms of land and different functions, and not having that resource in the city, and outside of real estate, just having a resource, an option for students who are looking for it. I think more options is always best.
I mean, pulled back from the brink of failure and imminent closure.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say,
Yeah.
and St. Bernard's is now thriving, and it's bringing in students from across the region. And I think it's that common theme that we've discussed throughout this show, but earlier with President Zarella of Fitchburg just does community and collaboration better than others.
Yeah, I think the reality is you have to never assume the worst, right? And I think when you look at St. Bernard's and you look at so many other things in Fitchburg, for whatever reason, we're able to assume there's either a better way to do something or there's a solution. And that's what I've seen really across the city. In particular, a lot of the people that I've worked with, even on the real estate side of things or the nonprofit side, there's always a belief there's a better option. And I think if you believe there's a better option, you have the energy to seek out that option. And that's what we've done in all these different things, from a real estate perspective or from St. Bernard's. We just sought out the solutions and found them, and luck will follow you eventually.
Well, and I think you just said that perfectly. I look at a property at the corner of Blossom and Crescent Street. Now, I live just up, half a mile up the road from this piece of property. This is the site of a an abandoned lot that was once a symbol of Fitchburg's glory days, essentially burned down in an empty lot long left for abandoned. And I think in some ways it had become the symbol of where Fitchburg had gone wrong. And now there are, 7 beautiful, townhouse apartments. Tell us a little bit about that project.
Well, you're absolutely right. I've talked to a lot of people about this project, and that was something that, we talked about it early on. It came across my desk, and I said yes. And there was strategy behind that yes. That had become, for a lot of residents, the epitome of Fitchburg. And I say that not because I think that that's Fitchburg, and it had just become what a lot of people looked at and said, oh yeah, Fitchburg, of course it's going to be vacant foundations. That project, in terms of just being, a huge opportunity, and had sat like that for almost 10 years, right? And there was an attempt, obviously, that didn't pan out, and then nothing else came from it. And we had a very unique opportunity to acquire what was there and work with an extremely good architect local to Fitchburg, and work with some really good contractors to re-envision it was originally going to be luxury townhouses, and we re-envisioned that to be something we thought fit better with the needs in our local real estate market at the time. And it really is, it's not done. We still have some landscaping and some additional work to do. All these things take time, especially with the pandemic. Everything's slower, and contractors and materials are slower, and so there is still more coming to that corner right there, and we're really excited to finish that off in the spring.
But really, it was an empty lot 18 months ago, and now there's, the apartments are there, and the landscape will be done in the next year.
And I do have to say, the community was extremely supportive, especially even during the project. People would walk by, and just the positive energy. I think a lot of people saw it as, wow, something's happening. There's a shovel in the ground. I said that a lot during the project. It's like we had shovels in the ground, and now since then you've seen more shovels in the ground, right? We've started to see those projects start to, as you drive down Main Street, it's like, oh, what's going on there? What's going on there? And it had been a while since we had seen some of that.
It's that momentum and that critical mass effect where people see success and they want to be a part of that success story themselves.
It's true.
You talked about, others see obstacles, you see opportunity. And I understand you just acquired a property on Main Street now, too, and looking to really breathe some new life into a formerly dilapidated building, too.
Well, I think the challenge is, right, so in my real estate development world and in my real estate sales world, when I'm working with clients in terms of acquiring properties and when I'm working with opportunities to try to revitalize, I'm always looking at those building blocks, right? And Crescent Street was a massive, those townhouses were a massive building block. And the smartest thing to do, and actually during that process, I worked with a close friend to acquire a property nearby because I thought it was, again, the more we work together, the better. And so for me, this property is across Crescent Street from the townhouses. And so I like to work things together. And it's really 3 commercial units on the first floor and vacant above. I don't know exactly how long it's been vacant, but it's pretty much been underutilized for a long time. And when I look at Main Street in Fitchburg, I look at the partnership between residential, commercial, and business development. I look at it as a triangle. And I look at it as we're constantly handing the baton back and forth between business development, between commercial development, and between residential. The reality is we can put 3 great new restaurants, but unless people are living and learning on Main Street, it's tough for those to survive. And at the same time, we can put 100 new apartments, but unless there's things for people to do on Main Street that they enjoy, it's going to be a challenge to market those. So you have to keep handing that baton back and forth. And so what I look at with this project is we've been lucky that there's been some recent commercial developments on Main Street, and I think we're handing that baton back again to residential development.
Well, and I think, particularly in local and state government, there's only so much that government and elected officials and public servants can do. They can create the opportunities and the situations, but at the end of the day, they can't force development to happen. And I think it works best when it's a partnership and a collaboration with our business community and our developers and our real estate agents, and it becomes an ever-evolving conversation. And I think in Fitchburg, and really part of what I think you've done better than just about anybody is helping to lead that conversation about what the needs are and where the opportunities are that the government might not be seeing. And so you've provided that opportunity for us to learn from you and for you to help really shape some of that future growth.
It's really a hand back and forth, like you said, because the reality is I don't know the opportunities that are always out there. And I think what Fitchburg has done a really good job at lately is making sure that we identify those opportunities and make sure they come to Fitchburg. The Crescent Street townhouses were made possible by a high density housing credit that we were able to get. It was a program through the state, that it was an opportunity that was available to Fitchburg, but it had not been utilized in the city yet. So working closely with our Department of Housing and Community Development and really figuring out which program fit best for Crescent Street and which program will fit best for other buildings on Main Street. I think the reality is, unfortunately, when you look at a lot of these properties, they aren't financially feasible on their own.
Right.
They need to be a situation where we're taking advantage of the things that are available and making sure that Fitchburg is getting the biggest piece of that pie possible. And there's no perfect way to do it. It has to be boots on the ground.
That's right. Well, I think you do it better than anybody of fostering that collaboration. And so I'm excited, too. Now, recently installed as president of the North Central Massachusetts Association of Realtors. Now, I know you're a Westminster native. Your business is based in Leominster.
Correct.
But I think the most amount of work you do actually happens right here in the city of Fitchburg. So I'm happy to appropriate that as the seat of the presidency is coming back to Fitchburg.
I agree. And what's great is the North Central Mass Association of Realtors has always been based, well, at least in recent memory, in Fitchburg. It's been on Summer Street
Right.
For the longest time. And so it is exciting to have, that energy, and what I love about that organization is the North Central Mass Association of Realtors is about 550 professionals and 70 plus business partners who really, they agree to a higher level of ethics. So a real estate agent and a realtor are not interchangeable terms. A lot of people use those interchangeably.
Right.
All realtors are real estate agents, but not all real estate agents are realtors. So real estate agents who commit to the higher level of ethics and the level of collaboration that the Realtor Association requires, they're the people I like doing business with, right? And we're really proud of our realtors here in North Central Mass, and I'm really proud to be able to work. One of my big things for this role is to not only collaborate, engage better with them, and make sure the community understands how much they're doing. The Abolitionist Park on Day Street in Fitchburg, we were extremely excited to be one of the first sponsors through a grant program we have available through the National Association of Realtors to get some funding into that project early on. There were plenty of funders that jumped on later, and we were extremely excited to also work on the ground when we were doing some of that work. And so the National Association of Realtors is extremely motivated to make sure our buyers and sellers are getting the best experiences possible, and also fight for home ownership. And that's something I'm really passionate about in all levels of our government.
Well, I think the association and you have done a great job ensuring that investment occurs in this city and throughout this region. But you've also done an incredible job making sure that there's an emotional and philanthropic investment in this community. And I think the association and you have really set a wonderful foundation and a great prospect for the year ahead.
Yeah.
And excited to continue that partnership.
Definitely. Yeah, we see a lot of opportunity, and I think at the end of the day, when I look at what our goals are in terms of continuing to push Fitchburg forward, it's so directly connected to the goals of being a realtor. That's why I love that organization so much, and why I chose to pursue that role, is because being a realtor is all about improving the community around you. And so why would I not jump behind it and make sure that I'm pushing that organization forward as much as possible?
That's, I think, a great theme of the night, moving things forward. And Nick, thank you for everything that you do for Fitchburg and for this region and beyond. So
thank you as well. It's great to have local politicians that you can collaborate with.
Well, again, I think collaboration is always the theme of this show and the theme of this region. And to our viewers at home, thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned for the April installment of Kushmerek Connection. We'll see you soon.